Hello, everyone. Welcome to this video. It's just on the tail end of discussing dispositions of depreciable property. I will just go into a short summary, shouldn't take more than a couple minutes, and that will allow us to wrap up disposition discussion. So the disposition summary when it comes to tax consequences is capital gains only occur if the proceeds of disposition exceeded the original capital cost of the property. There will be a capital gain. Since we have to recognize the proceeds between the UCC and the original capital cost, in these situations, there is a potential that we'll have to recognize the recapture if CCA on that property was ever claimed. Recapture gets recognized if the disposition amount subtracted from UCC results in a negative number. Terminal loss occurs if on the last day of the tax year, the UCC balance is still positive, even though we disposed of all the properties. So there are no properties remaining in the class, then the positive balance can be deducted in full as terminal loss. There's two exceptions. There's no terminal loss recognized for 10.1, and terminal losses can only be recognized for 14.1 when the underlying business has ceased to be carrying on. Either we closed up the business or we sold the business off to another person. So when are there no tax consequences? There's no tax consequences if all of the following conditions are present. The proceeds of disposition are equal to or less than capital cost. Since capital gain only occurs when the proceeds are more than cost, if proceeds are less than capital cost, no capital gain. If after we do our disposition, there's not a negative UCC, so the UCC is still positive, and we still have assets in the bin, we're not going to worry about recapture. If we have a positive UCC and there's still property, we also don't have terminal loss. So if UCC is still positive, no recapture. If assets still in the bin, no terminal loss. So to go back to our last exercise that we did, we noted that because UCC was still positive, there was no recapture. We still had assets in the bin, so there's no terminal loss. If it was our last asset, if that goes to zero, then we have to recognize the remaining UCC as terminal loss. If the disposal was, plus $9 million, or I guess $90 million, that's going to create a huge negative number that has to be added back on recapture. So terminal loss only occurs when this number gets to zero, the remaining assets gets to zero. Recapture only occurs if this number becomes negative. Capital gain only occurs if proceeds is more than capital cost. So if our proceeds was only $96,000, no capital cost or no capital gain. So in this situation, we have a disposition, but we still have UCC, we still have assets. The property was less, the proceeds was less than the capital cost. So there's no tax effects. There's no tax consequences from that disposition. We will simply do the CCA calculation and we move on to next year. The CCA suggested schedule deals in this style. Our beginning UCC, our acquisitions are added, we deduct the lesser of capital cost or proceeds, and if there's a net addition, we consider half-year rule and accelerated incentive. Good thing for this year, half-year and accelerated incentive are undoing each other, so it's just netting to 100% of whatever your UCC is. So the CCA base is the net effect, and then we take CCA. So if our disposals get rid of our UCC balance, then there's no need to progress to the CCA calculation because we know it's going to be zero. This style is much more in line with how the tax return does it. That's in line with the Tax Act. when we did the questions or the exercises, I was much more inclined to just do them based on calculations towards CCA, somewhat in this style. But for all of the questions, I always made sure to include this version of the result, which is in line to the suggested schedule from the tax return. So you can still see how the calculation would have been done under the normal formula. Our ending UCC comes out to the same number. For 5, we have both calculations here. Our total ending UCC still matches. Total CCA still matches. So you can use whichever version of this you like, as long as you're able to understand what's happening and use them correctly when we give you questions. Okay. That's the end of dispositions. In the next video, it's going to be the last video of the chapter. We'll discuss why we would want to have assets in separate classes. Thank you for your time. See you in the last video.